Alright y'all, welcome back. Today we'll be taking a look at my Posse build for Hellclock. This build prioritizes the use of summons, stuns, and teleportation as a means to control the fight while having great mobility. I really like this build because of the mobility it provides, as well as how quickly it can clear a floor and large groups of enemies. There is even a chance to stun lock bosses if the RNG gods give you the correct blessings. This video will cover the build as it is used in the Abyss difficulty. The skills we'll be using in this build are Fader's Lash, Summon the Guard, Phantom Marksman, Lasso, and Passage. My reason for choosing these skills is they are both thematic and have great synergy with the relics we will be using. Our primary skill for the Posse build is Fader's Lash. Fader's Lash is a fast attacking skill that does fire elemental damage as well as melee damage. It attacks in an arc in front of you, giving you a fairly large area of attack, but even though it does this broad attack, it is not an area of effect skill, which is important to remember when choosing our relics and blessings during the run. Now, this build assumes that you have 7 skill levels in your skill book. We are taking Fader's Lash at level 7 because it gives us the most increased base damage. It doesn't increase its casting time, it stays at 0.5 seconds, but it does greatly increase its mana cost. But when you see our relics, you'll understand that that's not that big of a deal. Summon the Guard is our secondary source of damage and a constant source of damage, as the summon guards are permanently up and don't need to be constantly resummoned. They do physical projectile damage but are not considered when taking marksman bonuses. These guards can be activated again by pressing the button you have assigned them to, which gives all your guards an increased fire rate for a few seconds. For Summon the Guard, we'll be using at skill level 7. This just gives the best increased base damage for them. It does increase the summon time or the cooldown time, but that's okay. We're not going to be spamming the guard rage ability throughout this build, and with some of the blessings and relics we're going to be taking, that cooldown time will come down a bit. Phantom's Marksman completes our summons, adding a temporary source of damage. Phantom Marksman is a physical projectile that does have the Marksman keyword. While active, 2 stationary rifles will fire at the closest enemies. It is important to remember that for each rifle you want summoned, in this case we can have 2, you must press the key that you have Phantom Marksman assigned to for each rifle summoned. So you don't press the key once to summon both rifles, you have to press the key twice, once for each rifle. Now I have this set at level 5 because it increases our base damage pretty well, but it also increases the mana cost. And with this build, because you're using Fader's Lash constantly, we do want to be a little bit mana conscious with some of our other skills. Lasso is an essential part of the Posse build, as we will see when we discuss the relics I have chosen. It is an area of effect melee skill that grapples and pulls enemies together, applies stun, which is very important for this build, and has a chance to apply bleed. An important thing to remember with Lasso is that it will still apply stun and bleed on bosses except for one, and we'll get to that in our cons section. I went with the maximum level 7 for this. It doesn't increase the cost of mana, but that cooldown does jump up quite a bit. But we have a way of dealing with that cooldown with one of our relics. Our last skill is Passage. This is our mobility skill that will come into play when we combine it with a specific relic. Passage is an AoE mobility spell that does lightning damage. It teleports you in the direction you are facing and damages enemies in your path. Now, I didn't increase the skill level of Passage because there's really no need to. We're not using it for its damage, we're using it for its mobility. Now you could use it for its damage. It can do quite a fair amount of damage if you build more around Passage, but we're not. We're using it for its mobility, so we want as much uptime as we can get with the least amount of mana cost. As with every other build, relics make this build really come together. If you do not have all your reliquary slots opened, which you should by now, I suggest prioritizing in order: Vader's Lash Relics, Lasso Relics, Summon Relics, and then Passage Relics. Take any non-specific relics that match this build if you only have the room for them. As for relic attributes, take what you can until you find the relic with attributes that work best for this build, such as mana regen, increased fire damage, and increased crit chance. For Vader's Lash relics, we'll be taking the following: Ancestral Memory, which summons a spirit that also casts Vader's Lash, dealing increased damage. This relic pairs well with our summon relics, as it is considered a summon and will be able to take advantage of those relics. With Settle the Score, every third use of Vader's Lash deals increased damage and increases the area of Vader's Lash, so it's going to make that broad attack even broader. Burning Shackles will consume Ignite while using Vader's Lash, dealing explosive damage, which helps us clear large groups of enemies quickly. Lastly, we'll be using Punishing Small Relic of Plague Protection. This relic increases the damage of Vader's Lash, but at an increased mana cost. This relic also increases our plague resistance, which I find is a big source of damage in the game. For our summon relics, we'll be taking the following: Call of the Guard, as it doubles the amount of guards we have for a few seconds when activating the guard. This is fantastic. So let's say if we have 4 guards and we activate Summon the Guard, those guards will now be doubled and you'll have 8 guards. Summoning of Earth, which reduces the enemy's resistance to physical damage, which increases the damage our summon guard skills will do. Summoning Large Relic of Lethality increases the damage that our summons do. And finally, summoning Small Relic of Laceration to further increase the damage our summons do. For our Lasso relics, we'll be taking the following 2. Northerner Belt is one of the most important relics for this build, as it will automatically cast Lasso when we cause critical damage. This means we don't have to worry about that increased cooldown time that we built up when we took it at max skill level 7. Barbed Wire will now cause our lasso to automatically apply bleed damage and increase the damage that bleed does. So now it's no longer a chance that lasso will cause bleed, it is a guarantee. For Passage, we'll be taking Ticket. Ticket is a fantastic mobility relic for this build, as it takes your summons with you when you teleport. This means you can reposition all of your summons instantly, which is incredibly important for Phantom's Marksmen, which are otherwise stationary. Energy Box leaves a plague damage area when using Passage and increases its damage. This applies a damage over time effect that will assist in clearing large groups. For our other non-skill specific relics, we have Elusive Small Relic of Physical Resistance, which grants increased evasion on hit with marksman skills. This works with Phantom Marksman, which we primarily use during bigger fights with elites or with bosses. This one also increases our resistance to physical damage due to its attributes. Bundle of Syringes gives us a stack of Bloodshot when we lifesteal, which grants us increased melee skill damage and stacks several times. This is important when dealing with enemy AoE skills, which quickly drain our health. Anything that drains enemy life will activate this relic. Spike Change is a great relic for this build due to our other relic, Barbed Wire, which automatically applies bleed. Spike Chains reduces all damage from bleeding enemies, which is fantastic. Bloodthirsty Small Relic of Swiftness will recover life during critical hits with melee skills, which for us is Fader's Lash. This relic assists in our survivability even when standing in AoEs. The swiftness element of this relic increases our attack speed, which increases the number of potential crits per second, while also increasing our chance to ignite enemies. Igneous Small Relic of Lightning Protection further provides ignite damage, adding to the damage that Burning Shackles does. And lastly is Banishing Large Relic of Fire. This is incredibly important for this build as it increases all melee damage, which for us is from Fader's Lash, to stunned enemies. The lasso also applies stun, so this relic will come into use very frequently. It also increases our fire damage, which is Fader's Lash elemental damage. The Oblivion Bell is the new bell passive tree that becomes available in Abyss difficulty mode. The passives I activate can mostly be found in the normal difficulty bell, so you can apply the same logic there. I feel the most important thing first is to increase the Hell Clock timer to extend the duration of our runs. This gives me time to complete the act and also gain as many soul stones as I can, and maybe some new relics. These upgrades can be found on the path leading up the tree. We get the first one here, and as we keep going up, we get a second one here, and then lastly we get this Hell Clock timer, and I believe it has 5 upgrades available to it. Damage, specifically summon damage and melee skill damage, is also important as it will increase the base damage of our summons and Fader's Lash. The more damage you do, the quicker you can progress through the run. And you can see that this also increases base damage generally. You will also want to increase your movement and attack speed just as importantly as your crit chance to activate Northern Belt, which also casts Lasso. You can find this in the southwest portion of the tree, which also continues down south. I would also prioritize Red Portal and the passives that allow it to appear more often so you can skip floors in your run. Red Portal will also skip the mini-bosses, but not the main bosses. After that, it's really a matter of preference. I prefer to take some increased resistances. I like increased plague resistance and physical resistance, but you also get some of these skills that are all resistances. I increase my soul stone gain. You'll have to take this one anyways in order to progress towards your Hell Clock. I also like to take increased gold gain because as you progress the increased gold gain tree, you'll have more gold at the start of a dungeon, and you'll gain more gold throughout the dungeon, which allows you to purchase our blessings. I didn't take any upgrades to potions and very few to base life or second wind because this build doesn't really have a problem with health and you don't really need the healing, so those points are better spent elsewhere, such as cooldown speed, which I feel is also one of the more important skills in the game, as well as endurance. It is important to note that I am posting this build before the update that gives us access to the entire Constellation map. Starting from the center of the map, I unlocked the Faith path and unlocked the Fury path, and you'll see why in a few moments. Starting on the Fury path, I went with Ogum, and I'm very much apologize for my pronunciations of these words. I do not speak Portuguese, so just be a little patient with me. So, Ogum gives us extra life, but also physical damage and fire damage, which is important for this build. Taking damage also gives you up to 5 stacks of vigor, which grants us 3% of damage reduction, which is great. And remember, that is reduction to all damage, not a specific damage. From there, I went to Gurachi because it gives us increased fire damage, and casting Lasso spends all Dawnlight stacks. Each enemy takes 50% of your base damage multiplied by the Dawnlight stacks as fire damage. We get those Dawnlight stacks when we apply Ignite, which gains us plus 4% fire damage for each Dawnlight stack, and we will passively gain Ignite through our fire damage. Now, with these two skill trees unlocked, we will gain enough faith to jump over to our only faith constellation, which is Saint Hedwig. This gives us increased summon damage, which is fantastic, as our summons are our secondary damage, and so we want to increase their damage as much as we can. Oxalate was my next choice because it increases all of our resistances. And finally, we gain additional mana regen equal to 3% of our missing mana ratio. You also gain additional life regen equal to 5% of our missing life ratio. With this, we'll have better survivability throughout our run. Now, I finished up with Zhao Longuinho, which increases our movement speed and cooldown speed, as well as our skill area effect, which comes into play with our passage skill. Now, the last one, defeating the rare monster, attracts all loot on the ground towards you for 10 seconds with no range limitations. That's okay, but we're so mobile, we'll be picking up that stuff anyways. Now, Zhao Longuinho, you can replace this with other things, such as, let's see, I've used Omalu before because it builds up our stun rate and wither buildup, but we already automatically gain stun with Lasso, so I decided to go against that. Of course, you can do whatever you think is best. I'm just showing you what I chose for this build and why. Okay, let's take a look at the skills. We're going to start off with Fader's Lash because it's our primary skill. So you can see how quickly it is, but you can also see our summon in there. And let me move. There you go. You saw the summon. So every time we attack, they're also going to attack. So we're essentially attacking twice, but the summon does more damage than we do. And as I said, the summon also takes advantage of the summon relics. Next, let's take a look at Summon the Guard and their Guard Rage ability. So right now, there are 4, but with our relic, we'll get double that. Alright, so now we have 8. And when they fire, they're going to fire at a faster rate with Guard Rage. And then with our Phantom Marksman, 1, 2. Alright, so we have to push for each time. And if we want to reposition, we can just resummon. It's only about a 1-second cooldown, so it's no problem. But what we can also do is we can use Passage. So let's get everything up, and boom. Teleports our summons with us because we're using that ticket relic. And you can also see that it's leaving behind a lightning AoE that pulses. So if we're trying to get away from an enemy, boom, they're going to take a little bit of lightning damage. All right, and lastly, we're going to do Lasso. And I'm only going to show it once because it has quite a bit of cooldown. So you'll see the circle. That's the AoE that's going to grab the enemies and pull them in. Right away, we get a Blessing of Proficiency because we took the passive skill at our bell. What we want to really avoid is anything that upgrades our passage, unless it's passage distance or elemental damage. Marksman skills are okay. They increase our damage or increase the duration, increase the damage of our Phantom Marksman, which is very nice during boss fights or during those elite battles that just take a little bit longer. Catholic Guard, you kind of want to prioritize a little bit because the increased damage or the increased number of guards or the increased duration that we can get of our guard rage, which is when we activate Catholic Guard, is more damage, more gooder, so keep that in mind. We're going to start off by taking Catholic Guard. Here's one of those red portals. We're not going to take that yet. So you saw Lasso proc there and pull those enemies into a tighter group, which allowed me to do more damage. It also applied stun automatically, which is going to allow me to do damage. And it applied bleed automatically, which is going to allow us to do more damage. So you can really see how it compounds. Probably our most important blessing of proficiency is Northerner Belt. This will increase the cooldown speed of when Northern Belt is activated. And we want Northern Belt to activate as frequently as possible because, again, it's going to apply stun and bleed. And on enemies that aren't bosses, it'll group them together, which makes it easier for us to kill. And we want Northern Belt, again, to proc as often as possible. Here you can see how well Lasso can help you clear a floor. It groups every enemy into one cluster, which allows you to do more localized damage. It stuns them, so you're doing more damage against stunned enemies. And it causes bleed, and you're doing more damage against bleed and taking less damage from bleed. So it really has that great floor clearing ability. Here I really want to highlight the effectiveness of stun by stun locking Urubu. As you can see, Urubu is not going anywhere beyond his first attack. As long as you're doing critical damage, and as long as you have selected the Northern Belt cooldown under the Blessings of Proficiency, this is what some of the boss fights can look like. Absolutely great, absolutely wrecks them. Control the fight, control the flow, and the fight is yours. So here are my pros and cons for this Posse build. My pros are that it has high mobility, its relics synergize very well with each other, and it has the ability to control the battle, especially with lasso and stun. Now the cons, its damage to elites and bosses can be a bit weak, but by no means is it a weak build. You will still be able to do quite a bit of damage to elites and bosses and chunk down their health rather rapidly, just not as fast as some other builds may do. And probably the biggest con, and I kind of alluded to this at the beginning of the video, is it is weak against Nina's monster. And this is because Nina's monster cannot be stunned. And when you have a build that revolves around stun and you're fighting an enemy that is immune to stun, there's going to be some issues. You still can defeat Nina's monster with this build, it's just going to take a little bit more time. Like I said in the introduction of this video, I really like this build as it has very good mobility, and once it gets going, great floor clearing ability, as well as the potential to stun lock bosses, at least for a little while. It is an easy build to play and offers plenty of satisfying moments. It also takes quite a while to build up, and you have to have very specific relics to make this build work. This is my first build video, and I hope it was helpful. Have you tried this build or one similar? Or do you have alternate relics or constellation recommendations? Let me know in the comments below. Remember to take care of yourself because you're worth it. And cheers.